Hello, this is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the Tennessean. This is part of a series of conversations we're having with mayoral candidates for the 2023 Nashville Mayoral election. Today we have Jim Gingrich, who is the former COO of Alliance Bernstein, who's with us today. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks David.
So tell our viewers, why are you running for mayor?
As I've spoken to people in Nashville, they're frustrated because they see the growth that's happening in Nashville that in many ways feels unrestrained and unplanned, and they worry that that is threatening the soul of the city. And people feel that in many different ways, but they're frustrated that we've been talking about the byproducts of that growth for many years now, and they're not seeing action taken by the city. And I think I have a background of getting things done and solving problems.
Tell us a little bit about your business background and also your personal background to help viewers get to know you better.
Well, let's start with personal background. I was born in Kansas City, which the fact that I wasn't born in Nashville, I put at the feet of my parents, but I was the third of three kids, or I was the oldest of three kids, and my mom was raised in a small town in Illinois that her dad was a sheet metal worker. She could never afford to go to college, and my dad was raised by a single mom, and they met in Chicago and took us to Kansas City. I was given chores from when I was a little kid and worked my way through college and ended up building a career at, most recently, Alliance Bernstein, where I was ultimately ended up being the chief operating officer. I oversaw a budget of billions of dollars, as well as oversaw thousands of employees. And the last thing I had the pleasure of doing before retiring was moving the headquarters here to Nashville.
You've been involved in nonprofit work in the community. Could you talk a little bit about that involvement and why you think it's important?
Well, one of the things that is so appealing about Nashville is the fact that people in Nashville care. We care about our neighbors, we care about our community, and we care about the city. And that is very, very apparent when you look at the health and vibrancy of the nonprofit community. And I was fortunate enough to get involved in a whole series of nonprofits, from the United Way to the Community Foundation to an organization called Rafa that's involved in criminal justice reform, to Coalition for Better Health, which is about how do we change health behaviors as a preventative way, as well as the Friends of Warner Park. I mean, we have such a great park system, and it's such a privilege to be involved in that as well.
I would agree with the park system. It's one of my favorite parts of the city. What are the things that have kept you here in Nashville? You certainly came with the company, but obviously the fact that you're running for mayor means you care about the city. But what are those things that makes Nashville special for you?
Nashville is so infectious. It's there are so many things to love about our city. It's what city has the type of culture and vibrancy and diversity and greenways and parks that we were just talking about? There are so many things here that make this such a special place. But I have never been in a city that has the type of people that we have in Nashville. I benefited personally from the kindness of people here. It is such a welcoming place. And I also had the opportunity to see, for the Alliance Bernstein employees who moved here, what happened to them as well. And you know, we all have this vision of what happens in, you know, for example, the tornado and how we all pitch in, but it happens every day too.
I know that there's some challenges that continue to persist in Nashville. One of them is housing, and this is obviously not unique to Nashville, but how do you see it here, and what would you like to see for the vision?
It is a real shame when the people who serve the city. That is everybody from somebody who's working in Metro to a teacher, a firefighter can't afford to live in the city that they serve. And we're at the point now where half of the people who rent in the city are housing cost burdened. And that needs to change. And we have done, I think, as far back as I can remember, every mayor, when they've come into office, has done an affordable housing study. Okay, and every one of those studies concludes that it's worse than the last time we studied it. And I think a lot of people's frustration is, when are we actually going to do something about it as opposed to studying it?
What are the other issues that you're hearing from people? You mentioned cost of living early on, but what are the things that people are saying that they're most concerned about that they'd like you to fix if you're elected mayor?
Well, again, I think in some ways there is a single issue, which is we have this growth going on in the city that feels chaotic, unplanned, and unrestrained. And people see all of the byproducts of that growth impacting their daily lives. And what they don't see is somebody with a vision about what does this growth mean for the city? How do we anticipate what growth is going to bring and deal with those issues? You know, we have become a big city now with big city issues. They're complex, they're hard, but that doesn't mean they can't be solved. And we can have growth, and we can have a high quality of life. We could preserve the heart of Nashville, but doing so requires leadership that not only has a vision, but has the courage to do something as opposed to actually study the problem and kick the can down the road.
You come with a business background. You have not been elected to office before, but what I've heard from business leaders is that they're very concerned about the contentious politics between the state and the city. What kind of background can you bring to help heal that?
Well, first of all, politics is exactly the right word. I think one of the reasons, this is a great example of why people are so disillusioned with politics today, because we kind of gotten to this point, and we're still at this point, because you either had politicians who were looking to score points or politicians who are trying to score points now, rather than acting in saying to themselves, what's in the best interest of the people who live in Nashville? What is the best interest of those who live in the counties who surround Nashville? What are the best interests of the people who are in the state? So, look, I'm not a career politician, okay? I'm not out to score points. I'm just out to get us to a better place. And we have so much in common on which to build from a better relationship, and we've had a better relationship in the past. And I'm firmly convinced if we can get out of this political back and forth and get to why is anybody in public service to begin with, we'll get to a better place.
In an earlier editorial board meeting, you talked about your passion for education, how important it was. Would you share that with the viewers, please?
Well, so I talked a little bit about my background. My parents had the opportunity to build a better life for themselves and their family than what they enjoyed as children. And I have been fortunate enough to build a better life than what my parents had. And everybody should have that opportunity. Everybody here in Nashville should have that opportunity. But the fact is that when looked at relative to other cities, 80+% of the cities in the United States have a better opportunity, if you're born poor, to not be poor. For that kid who was born into a poor situation to not be poorer than we do. And there is no investment that I can think of in the city that is more important than investing in our children and their future. And education is at the core of that.
Talk a little bit about your approach to building relationships. The mayor's job in many cases tends to be a booster, tends to be a connector, has to manage very different, whether it's talking to Belmead or East Nashville or Bordeaux, you know, What is your approach to building relationships with diverse communities?
We all are part of the same city. Everybody wants to see a situation where children have an opportunity to build a better life than their parents, right? Everybody wants to live in a neighborhood they can afford that's safe, with a good school for their kids and a sidewalk in front of their house and a park that they can go play in. Those are universal things that we all want. How that is applied in a specific neighborhood, I think is unique to that neighborhood, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we're all part of the same community, and this is one Nashville, and let's not get wrapped up in, again, the politics of a particular situation.
You've written before in a guest opinion column your thoughts about the Titans Stadium. Would you share a little bit where your thinking is today?
You're right. I did express a point of view on that negotiation. Look, the Titans, I'm a huge Titans fan. I would have liked to see them finish the season better than they finished this last season, but I'm a huge Titans fan, and they have done a lot for the city, and they deserve our support and partnership. That said, I did express the view that Titans ownership, they're in the business of trying to negotiate the best deal they can. And I felt that we were going down a path of negotiating a deal that was one-sided or lopsided. That said, I think we're going to be, by the time the next mayor steps in, that deal will be signed, sealed, and delivered. And I'm a believer in honoring the commitments that the city has made.
Well, thank you. Alliance Bernstein, where you worked at most recently, is now on Broadway and John Lewis Way, formerly Fifth. There with the National Museum of African American Music, the Fifth and Broadway development. It certainly has added tremendously. It used to be the old convention center there. You've talked about in the past, at least in the past, the Drug Board being about balance. And how do you see a good balance in downtown?
Vibrant downtowns are places where people work, live, and play. And it's important, as you just said, that we maintain that balance. I'm not sure that everybody sees that as being perfectly balanced today, and that's something that we need to work on.
Well, thank you. One of the things I'd like to ask candidates about is we have a lot of visitors to Nashville, obviously. I think 14 million plus visitors every year. When people ask you if they're coming for a weekend trip, what are 2 or 3 things I need to eat or go see or go do? What are the recommendations you have for them?
Well, if they're coming, they probably will want to go to Broadway, which I think is great. As you know, there are several iconic places on Broadway, like Roberts, that I would say be sure you go to Roberts. But there's so much else in Nashville that people can go and see, whether or not it's go grab a taco on Nolensville Road, or go get a pizza at 5 Points in East Nashville, or go see a production at TPAC, or get out to one of the parks. There's so much that is unique about Nashville, so get off of the kind of standard beaten track and get to know the city.
Well, thank you very much. As we conclude, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience about yourself and about your campaign?
I think that what people are frustrated with is, certainly as I've talked to people, is politics as usual, where we have a culture of when we see a problem, we make promises, but that reality never happens. That tough challenges are met with studies and commissions and consultants that produce pretty reports with recommendations that then sit in a 3-ring binder, that we pat ourselves on the back for how much money we're spending rather than hold ourselves accountable for the result that is actually achieved. And that is not the world that I came from. In a business setting, that is not a recipe for success. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I have a lot of the same frustrations that Nashvillians across the city have. And I think I have a background that can make a difference.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gingrich, and to our viewers and to our subscribers, thank you. Keep up with coverage and updates on candidates and news of the 2023 election through Tennessean.com. Thank you.